Hey guys, как там? Long time no see. Nevertheless, I'm back and we can make some stuff. Do you know this feeling when you're doing this commission piece and everything goes so smoothly, like no problems, absolutely perfect, you get the money and you're out? Me neither. But like most of us know that it never goes as smooth as they make it look in these YouTube videos, right? And so I thought maybe I can show you a real case study, a real illustration job for a real client. But like in most cases you have this NDA and stuff, right? Except this time I got lucky and I found just the right guys. So there's this little board game startup that is based in United Arab Emirates, and I've been doing some commercial stuff for them recently. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't done big complex illustrations with multiple characters in a while, so there definitely was some struggle involved in this one. But if you're an artist, struggle is what we do, right?
You nearly adopted the struggle, but I was born in it.
If you think about it, it's not even a joke. Sorry, Mom. Okay, I digress. So, to give you some context about the job, I have to tell you a few things about the setting of the project. The cool thing about it, and what attracted my attention, was that it's a very cool and probably a bit underrepresented mix of like ancient Arabian culture and Lovecraftian horror. You know what? I'm talking so much I hate it. And we've got so many toys to play with. So let me take you on a little adventure.
In a world of sand, burning sun, and ancient splendor, where the dusty winds carry cheesy melodies in harmonic minor,
cause the lame westerners can't process more than 12 notes,
and the stars shine upon cities of Baghdad and Damascus, an ancient evil is lurking in the shadows.
Now, it's not just trade caravans and golden palaces at risk.
No. Now it's the void. Old gods with too many tentacles, ancient beings with an unreasonable amount of eyes, and creatures you really wish you hadn't seen before dinner. As the world teeters on the edge of extinction, it's up to you, yes, you brave player, to save the realm from cosmic annihilation. Will you rise as the hero this world needs, or will you become just another snack? Because in this world, the only thing worse than getting sand in your boots is getting a tentacle in your face.
Jesus, are you for real, GPT? Like, literally, trillions of dollars. I assumed we can do better than that. Okay, what was it again?
This summer, grab your sword, gather your courage, and prepare for a fantasy adventure of Lovecraftian proportions.
Coming soon to the nearest board game shops near you.
Okay, we can finally move to thumbnails. First of all, the theme of this illustration is to depict an action that would feature one of the few original classes in the setting, the Mystic. You can think of them as some kind of warlocks in the world. They are summoners, and the entities they summon are called unseen. They are the dark and twisted spirits that offer great power, yet demand even greater price. Just like your 7th Red Bull vodka in the club before you wake up in dirty hostel cuff to bed wearing woman's dress. But everyone tells you you were a legend yesterday. Never happened to me, by the way. I always start illustrations with thumbnails in one form or another, and thumbnails can be different. You can do line art, you can do values, you can be gangsta and jump to colors right away. Which one to choose depends on your comfort zone and problems you're solving. Line art allows for very quick R&D when it comes to poses and design. Here you can see me going through a bunch of suggested poses for mystic character. The guys and me, we discussed if the mystic could be depicted twisted, broken and tortured by the burden of powers, as if he or she is not in control, but rather a puppet in the hands of the entities it's supposed to wield. An interesting concept, but can end up looking kinda confusing to the viewer, or worse, a bit comical. So when I form a multi-character composition, I try to first focus on the main story beat, the focal character or major dramatic point, main antagonists. And then I build the rest of the picture around it, supporting and decorating the story with nuances. It's easy and fun to do in this early stage and is very hard to keep intact when you develop the image further. Line art is probably the cheapest and most efficient design tool you have. It can describe the essence of the thing very precisely without overloading one's brain with unnecessary information. Just like a mother describing her Dutch drunk son that fell asleep on the toilet with his pants down. Never happened to me, by the way. So now when I have a few drafts, I present them to the client and we can discuss some ideas further, pinpoint some stuff we like or dislike and move closer to a more defined idea. And this is how we decided to have the mystic in the center of the composition, commanding the chaos around. First of all, I decided to make a quick draft of the scene based off of line art in 3D, which is a cool idea in many cases, or can be a small yet unfortunate waste of your time in other cases. This time, it was more of a letter. One of the things the client wanted to try and portray in the illustration was the shattered sky, this permanent scar that the void invasion left in the time-space. I actually wasn't sure if with everything that was supposed to be happening below, this thing in the sky wouldn't be an overkill. So I decided to quickly draft it in to be able to take it into account with the final characters. Line art is perfect to explore things when there are lots of unknowns. When you don't know the pose, the shape, the design yet, line art allows you to highlight any of these aspects without burning your energy on value management and stuff. But it also has its flaws. When it comes to solving for composition, you might fall under false impression that you know how the lighting will affect the final image. And in many cases you still end up underestimating the impact the light and shadow shapes will have on the composition. You can actually try and solve for light and shadow in line art, but when we talk about big illustration, it kinda defeats the purpose of using it to unload the brain, in my opinion. Here I'm trying to come up with some design for the unseen. I was thinking about some constantly transforming, malformed, wispy creatures that would emanate from the sigil on the possessed mystic body. The client did like the overall concept of that, but they wanted to portray the unseen as something more ambiguous. And since we both didn't have any concrete ideas on how to approach it at that moment, I decided to just brute force the problem by providing some other solutions in different contexts. The thing is, sometimes you might have a gig with a big company stuffed with art leads and art directors who will curate your every step to get almost exactly what they need out of you. Other times you deal with a client who can't afford this mediator between you and their vision, and more so when it's an IP which is extensively developed and defined on paper, but haven't gone through an expansive visual R&D phase. You end up with a whole bunch of entities, locations, things, characters and matters that your client is very passionate about and holds very dear. Yet they become a tricky minefield for you to navigate, because once put on paper, numerous nuances will emerge that you never knew existed, and your client never knew they were important. And unfortunately, navigating this intricate maze of challenges is your task. Because this is why you were needed in the first place, not just to offer technical execution. We're actually in a moment of history where there will be plenty of products developed particularly to fill this technical role. So what we actually can offer is a wider expertise. And while expertise is greatly valued in bigger companies as well, in smaller companies it's much easier to provide a valuable input. It definitely can be stressful at times. In my experience, working in big, dehumanizing corporate machines is draining as hell. And this is definitely one of the many ways in this field to get a major burnout. This and doing kinky jet commissions. For sake, I swear to God. That happened to me, by the way. So right about now I'm drifting into this what the hell am I even doing zone. I remember I had a short discussion with the team and realized that my initial idea of using this towering structure in the background as a visual landmark to play against the main character was kinda dumb. Because they have this Tower of Babel as one of the key landmarks in the world. I thought that it might be in the background. But then, when I got more input on how they saw this and tried to play with design a little, I quickly realized the whole area will be too damn busy to make any sense. We also discussed that since it's a bazaar scene, we want to have some kind of a crowd here. I also have undefined creatures that are damn important for the whole concept on my hands. Have no clue yet how they will hold against the crowd, the tower and the tear in the sky. Obviously, I had to just face the fact that I jumped to execution stage of the painting too soon. I had to take a step back, lay down a few quick drafts again, and gather some more info on the elements involved. But instead, I moved to the 5 stages of grief. So, let's observe them in order. Denial. Yep, you all know that. You all been there. Barely anything makes sense at this point. You don't see any glimpse of solution in most of the things you're staring at. You only see problems to solve. But there's this tiny crisis management fairy flying over your shoulder, whispering soothing lies in your ear. Dude, relax, it's just an ugly phase. You have to push through it. Believe in yourself, love. See ya. So I change the background structure, push it to the left to open up space for character readability. And predictably enough, I end up with left-heavy composition. To alleviate this stress, the only logical solution is to start painting the character, cause why not? Surprisingly enough, it doesn't help. So the structure moves back in the center. Now it clashes with the character too much, so we put in shadow. It's dusk time now. Need to turn on some lights. Good. Nope, still crap. Next logical step, keep painting the character and let the Lord Jesus take care of the rest, I guess. Yeah, like this. Make her pretty, dummy. That will make all the difference. Whoops, nope, still crap. So now we finally switch into a higher gear. And next stage, anger. And you know, sometimes anger is good, because it allows you to demolish the old and on its ruins build something new. So there goes the hours spent on 3D blockout. But on a positive note, I finally make this one constructive decision to use architecture in the center to frame the character rather than being another clashing point of interest. Good one. I also put the suggestion of the rest of the city towering in the left upper corner, solving for another requirement we had in the piece, and now it doesn't feel too overpowering since we framed the whole composition with walls, and I know we'll have the closest character to the camera opposite to the side with the towering city. So hopefully he'll balance things out. But when I take a quick look at the old layout with the characters, I realize they have to go. But wait, you can't just go and fix all the important things at once, right? Nuh-uh. First, we have to face the bargain. And what kind of a bargain it is if it doesn't start with procrastination? So we'll definitely start with doodling the crowd. Because let's be real, why even bother doing dumb stuff when there's no one around to see it? So we need an audience, and we need it now. Who cares if they won't last till the end of the show? Okay, now some more doodling and detailing on the background. Here I actually can somewhat justify these actions. By this moment I feel very confident that this is the background I need, and on top of that my client will need some extra marketing material for social media and web. We discussed that, so I'm not afraid that this extra detail and work for these background objects will go to waste. Even if I'll end up covering it in this image at the end, as long as it's saved in one of the backup files, we can recover it and use it later. Now, the tear in the sky, well, that definitely should have been addressed later. As well as the clouds. For those who are interested why the freaky colors, I use any vibrant color to allow me to read the shape well first. Lock it and paint in the form, I mean light and shadow, as a clipping mask. And then find the fitting colors using the hue adjustments. I have this placeholder figure standing there, and I try to make it work. Although I know in my head that that's definitely not how it will end up looking, because I'm not taking into account all the effects, the unseen creatures that I'm simply ignoring now. But I just want to feel good at least about something, right? So we're back to painting happy little clouds. And by the end of the stage, let's literally paint little old me running away from my responsibilities. Look at him go. Okay, and finally, long overdue, last stop, ladies and gentlemen, acceptance. I realized that not the current placeholder nor the previous design are optimal by this point. So they'll have to go. Also, I have to bleach the colors, and the reason for that is that the focal characters will be definitely in shadow, standing against a light background, which means that exposure of our imaginary camera will have to focus more on shadow details. And that, in return, will make the brightest areas in the shot clip more in white spectrum, and lose color intensity there. As the most vibrant colors, except maybe yellow, exist in mid values rather than very bright ones. That is, if we want to at least stay in the realm of stylized realism. I also put some more time to form some of the towering city in the background, mainly focusing to provide somewhat interesting silhouette and keep it not too busy with details so far. And the next very important thing was to bring in some transitional mid to background element that would help me read the depth and perspective better. And also better judge the scale of objects. And one of the trickiest and important things here is to watch your floor level. Because with these low camera angles, a difference in just a few pixels of where you make your object touch the floor can really mean 20-50 meters of a difference in distance away from the camera. Our human brain is super perceptive of that, and will always tell you that something's wrong, but is very reluctant to explain you the exact reasons why, just like your ex who dumped you. Never happened to me, by the way. And now, when I'm finally feeling confident about the background and how it sets the scene for the main drama, I move into the final R&D for the character, and I really let go and let it evolve. At this moment, for me at least, it's all about letting yourself to get the feel for the character. I might go to stare at the nearest mirror, to do silly poses and faces at this point. I literally zone out and try to become the character. Nowadays I rarely use references for the stage. I did before, but it was always like very time consuming and would drain my energy and focus a lot. So I usually ended up resorting to either using myself or my family as a reference and extrapolating the anatomical structure on different character, male or female. And what I mean is I try to understand what makes a grin or a smile or other emotion work in terms of anatomy. How can a pose support that? How to make the pose grounded and not stiff? And I'm trying to replicate it rather than copy it from any reference one-to-one. You don't always end up with perfect results, but at least in my opinion, this way you develop more expressive freedom and adaptability, on top of probably gaining more knowledge. Probably because you struggle first, therefore you create a strong stimulus for brain to solve a problem, and then you give your brain the solution. So it kinda creates this very strong aha moment, and I guess your brain grabs on this information more effectively. And maybe it's all like a whole bunch of gibberish and it's just me. And if you're different, share in the comments. Might be interesting topic to discuss. I try to avoid over-detailing the characters at this stage and treat them all as just other objects in the scene. Just blocks of shapes defining major planes. I can put a little more detailing in the faces though sometimes. I also don't really use references for poses here, only a set of references that informs some ideas for clothing design, and maybe a few pictures, photos or illustrations with a similar lighting scheme to serve as an anchor point for my brain to pre-visualize the form before I put it on the canvas. And to make this stage simpler, I tried to think of a certain minimum shape size that is the zero ground for my detailing, so far to say. Think of it as a traditional artist. You only say have 3-5 brushes you can use for the painting, and let's say if it's a medium-sized canvas, going with super tiny brush is highly impractical. So you will have this medium to small sized brush that will be your versatile workhorse, so to say. This will result in adequate amount of detail for medium-sized objects in the painting and more simplified shapes for smaller ones, because you won't be able to go so small. And actually this very nicely coincides with how human eyes work. We only see simplified blobs of colors in the distance, and they become more and more complex as the objects come closer. Or in my case, with no glasses, still remains a mushy blob. But in digital, we can zoom in close enough to put a pair of Victoria's Secret G-strings on a tiny little butt of every fly circling around some distant pile of shit over there. Why would you do that? I don't know. Would anyone do that? A quick Google search won't disappoint you. God, I love internet. Anyway, and so here I arrived to the point where I feel like things start to click. There is some doubt about things, but overall I feel that if from now on I will deviate from this composition, it won't be as drastic as before. Although I liked quite a few ideas here at this point, I still felt that the composition was off. I mean, obviously the composition of this piece is not special, but it definitely could feel more organic if the grouping of characters wasn't so stiff and staged. And this is a big topic in itself, how to compose a shot with many characters properly. It's tough, and it's demanding, and by this time, having spent so much time solving problems on the go, your brain starts to lose focus and becomes lazy. As a result, you can see that the picture with all its characters starts to feel less like a unified piece, but rather a collage of small, poorly interconnected stories. as if every character lives in a neat little bubble of canvas space, carefully crafted for them to be fully visible and nicely presented there. And because of this, for me at least, it feels very fake. Also, the characters lost hierarchy in the scene. They are approximately the same scale in terms of grouped shapes. This huge action line spiraling around foreground characters seem too forced and curated, actually put there just to lead the viewer's eye and make the character to the right turn his head at optimal angle. I wasn't happy and felt like bringing some more dominance to the figure of Mystic would probably be a good thing to try. And that's the moment this big blue fella came into being. I just felt that together with the Mystic, they will establish a big dominant shape in the center of composition, and probably also they will eat up on these isolated bubbles that emerged around the characters. Bring the image together a little bit better. The creature is called Unseen, but in discussions I had with the client, they told me that I can think of it as some kind of treacherous djinn, some chaotic and barely reliable source of prehistoric power. At first I entertained the idea of making it almost transparent, but that would create more confusion than impact, so I decided to make it a bit translucent. Once again, I didn't like how the pose of the Mystic played out in the context of this towering mass. And to make them a bit more equal and unify them a bit more, I decided to change the Mystic pose once again. This one felt much more compelling, at least for me. I extended the character's hand to suggest a moment of an intimate bonding between the creature and the summoner, and decided to roll with it like so for a while. Also, the background created this uncomfortable tangent with the back of the djinn, so I knew that I had to build up the structures there a bit more. And the poor guard hanging in the air to the right was introduced to bring the stakes higher and add some dynamism to the scene that would otherwise end up being another everyone standing looking all cool and some slightly impressed poster shot. The problem was that I haven't figured out at this point yet how to make an organic transition between him and the creature, at least so that it would be easily readable. And how to justify this weird, poorly formed offspring of the creature cycling the frame and forcing the other guard to turn the head. You can see me playing with the idea of Jin holding the choking guard in his hand. And after some doubts, you will see me doing exactly that. I mean, not choking the guard obviously, although I was choking myself already in this point. So basically from now on it's only just me painting. I will just let you watch through this process and I'll come back with more comments when they're needed. Here's a number of attempts to come up with some interesting design for the Jinn creature. When I make first concepts, the first few designs tend to be just some brain farts copycat of existing designs. Although, as we know, every design is a copy of some other design, blah blah blah, we're not going down that rabbit hole, right? In this case, it obviously was an alien head. But eventually, dancing around some initial ideas, I tend to find something more interesting, hopefully. Here I decided to give this thing a face underneath the translucent surface. Now the face of the mystic. Well, you can just see that I'm kinda tired at this point, and I missed the proportions and face complexion, making it lighter than blocked in values. I had to leave the painting for some time, but didn't for some reason. But in general, as you can see, I'm trying to be somewhat brush efficient, just focusing on bigger shapes, not going for detailing much. Here, when I'm close to just defining and polishing the piece, I push the values of the whole image to get a comfortable value range. When it comes to the characters up close, notice that although they are in shadow, lit by the sky, not the sun primarily, we can now see greater contrasts in them. But meanwhile, the background clipped to very bright color and lost saturation, as we actually discussed previously. And now I finally acknowledge the fact that I lost the desired complexion for the mystic skin and decided to go much darker with her, with the skin I mean. And I also felt like the previous post took away from the menacing vibe of the character. So I made her more imposing and less tender. And the whole shape mass of the mystic together with the creature really consists of a double spiral or closed H shape. So your eyes start involuntarily spend more time following the suggested action lines there. And you will notice me further accentuating these features working with lost and sharp edges in this area. The face of the creature was kinda creepy, which is good I guess, but at the same time had some comical vibe to it. His small playful eyes. His quite expressive face was placed actually too close to Mystic's face to not be a distraction. So I decided to empty his eye sockets. Brutal. Here I play a little more with the placement of the characters, still trying to find a way to justify the spiral fiend circling around the frame. By this point it actually seems very strange for me how the guard standing on the ground apparently doesn't give slightest shit about his brother in arms hanging in the air gasping for breath. Highly inconsiderate behavior. Here goes a cheap attempt to avoid grabbing the guard with the Jinn's hand. Super cheesy and forced in my opinion. Now painting the ground properly, all the pebbles, and double checking for inconsistencies in perspective, which usually happen. And by the way, if you've been following so far, notice how the number of layers by this stage has drastically dropped. Personally, I hate working with too many layers. I like managing a small and neat layer structure, but when I'm still in the middle of painting and I need to experiment or make fast changes, I never bother managing them too thoroughly. For me, actually, it's too much of a focus drain. So I just end up producing as many layers and clipping masks as I need and manage them at certain milestone. Here goes some polishing of visible background. I also felt that the gen was too saturated, he definitely didn't fit the environment too well. And honestly, I think even in the final image he might be a bit too saturated for my liking. Sometimes I just have to finally let it go. By this moment, I was adamant to finally resolve this problem with the hand and this floating stuff. Therefore, all these pathetic attempts that go beyond ridiculous right now. And I finally decide to go for the hand grab. And that surely means I have to repaint the pose for the poor bastard that was grabbed. And if you can notice, I made this indents in his silhouette, trying to imagine how he would look like if he was squeezed by a giant hand, in case the hand was transparent, because I was planning to play with translucency on the hand as well, and to make every finger bigger and hopefully being able to have less problems with making them slightly transparent, I resolved to 4 fingers. And that is kinda dangerous nowadays. AI crusaders could have accused me of witchcraft. So we have to be vigilant. And here finally I decided to turn the other guard's head to his friend. After that, I just start detailing and polishing some of the poorly defined areas in the illustration. When you deal with painting and repainting many characters, you will inevitably paint lots and lots and lots of fabric. And fabric can be a tricky subject to tackle, especially in the beginning. With time, I started enjoying painting it more and more, because every time it feels like you're solving this intricate spatial puzzle. And as with many other subjects, searching for specific reference for each and every item and pose out there would be insane, at least for me. So when it comes to fabric, I actually developed an approach that works for me. First of all, there are only a few key factors that dictate how the folds will form. It's gravity, finding the tension point, and compression point. And these factors define the topology of deformation. And the actual character of folds is defined by the qualities of fabric. Therefore, I have compiled this reference board of many different types of clothing. Pants, shirts, coats, etc. of different shapes and sizes, tight, baggy, loose, etc. and different types of fabric, dense and stiff, or thin and stretchy, and so on and so forth. And once again, rather than copying them as they are, I actually try to understand the principles of how these things function, which eventually gives me much more freedom than just copying from particular references. And yes, the results might be inconsistent sometimes, because as everything, it demands lots of brain power and focus. But with time and practice, you will find more and more nuances that add to believability of the subjects you try to portray from your imagination. So obviously don't get discouraged if things don't click at first. You definitely will figure it out at a certain point. And as you can probably notice by now, I tend to overpaint my characters a lot. And this is particularly because very early on in my career I felt like my work actually suffered a lot from some rookie mistakes, like being too precious about some elements in the painting that I liked. You quickly realize that unfortunately a single beautifully executed area doesn't make a painting. So over the years I developed this habit to be more relentless about the things that don't work in the painting. And when you do it quite often, repaint stuff, you start to develop these time and energy efficient methods of working, and they allow you the flexibility to experiment and make fewer compromises later. But I guess this is more intuitive than conscious. For example, I noticed that I only resort to line art if I don't have any concrete idea about the design of the subject or the pose in my head. But when I know what I want to see, I intuitively jump straight to blocking the new pose or designing colors. And as I remember right about here, I showed this picture to the guys, and they asked me to make this creature somewhat of a frost elemental, because they had this ability in the game that would fit the context of this image just right. So I quickly found myself a reference of a patch of ice and started repainting the djinn. At first, I made him a bit too angular, and I didn't like how he lost his more organic muscular traits, so I decided to make the eyes conform to his original forms more, and that was the result. I think, honestly, the only proper way to do illustration like this is a good preparation phase, which means a few concept sketch callouts, lots of compositional sketches inside, and also discussing them with the client might be a good idea. But in reality, many of us don't really do that, and the reason is actually twofold. One, because of the pay, obviously. Many times it feels like too much effort for too little reward. Although, in the end of the day, the artist in this case is always the one who suffers the consequences the most. Because let's be real, you need the highest quality work from you even more than your client does. And there is a trap there that I fell into many times. Where I was paranoid about all the wasted time doing all these thumbnails and sketches that are not the part of the final work. But then I failed to recognize how much time, effort and energy they actually saved me in the process. And the second reason is toxic hustle culture habits. I know firsthand that I'm guilty of blaming myself for spending too long in the pre-production phase of a project, being afraid to seem indecisive or slow for the client. And as someone with persistent and acute imposter syndrome, I know how demoralizing it can get. And I've been doing it professionally for more than 12 years by now. Because everywhere you look, you see all these masters of the craft, like carelessly spewing greatness from the tips of their brushes. But in the end of the day, you most probably didn't see these 15,000 hours of fails that were happening behind the scenes. And this is probably one of the main reasons I make this content, as a therapy for myself and encouragement for any aspiring artist super conscious of one's imperfections and fails. If you like content like this, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because there will be more. See ya!